I'm Luke Summerhays, and I love Spoink. I'd like to start this podcast with something a little different. A reading from the King James Bible. From Matthew 7:6. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. The pearls and pigs in this case are nuggets of wisdom, and those unwilling to receive said wisdom. Jesus was warning against wasting time trying to teach those unwilling to learn, or preach to those whose minds were already made up. Regardless of its original meaning, the term pearls of wisdom has entered the mainstream English lexicon, and the futility of pearls before swine has been widely accepted. Pokemon proposes a pig that can take those pearls of wisdom and make use of them, boosting its mental capacity to levels of psychic power. Spoink is a cute little blob of a pig with teeny tiny hands, no feet, and a pearl nearly the size of its own head/body balanced precariously between its ears. Pokemon Sapphire tells us, Spoink keeps a pearl on top of its head. The pearl functions to amplify this Pokemon's psychokinetic powers. It is therefore on a constant search for a bigger pearl. And Heart Gold explains, it carries a pearl from Clamperl on its head. The other fun part of Spoink's design is found at the other end from the pearl on its head, at its tail. Pigs famously have curly tails, and in this Pokemon's case that is exaggerated into a big spring, which it bounces on like a jack-in-the-box, or Zebedee from the Magic Roundabout. Spoink bouncing around on its tail is a fun little image, but it is twisted somewhat by some infamous Pokedex entries. Firstly, Pokemon Emerald tells us, a Pokemon that manipulates psychic power at will doesn't stop bouncing even when it is asleep. It loves eating mushrooms that grow underground. This is innocent enough by itself, but combine it with Pokemon Ruby, which tells us, Spoink bounces around on its tail. The shock of its bouncing makes its heart pump. As a result, this Pokemon cannot afford to stop bouncing. If it stops, its heart will stop. Pokemon YouTubers and meme lords love to point out that if taken literally, this would mean Spoink should die every time it faints in battle. Perhaps you could argue it's safe in some kind of suspended animation or incorporeal form inside a Pokeball, but it should at least mean the player is slaughtering wild Spoinks, right? If I wanted to sleep a little better at night, I would suggest that they need to stay active to keep their heart pumping, but they could probably take a little break, or they would have gone extinct a long time ago. Or maybe they can simulate the bouncing with their psychic powers. The name Spoink is a simple mix of oink and spring. The Japanese name is Banebu, combining bane, or spring, and buta, or pig. As well as having spring-like tails, a spring pig is apparently the best kind. According to farmers, spring is the best time for pigs to be born. If you do believe life as an eternally bouncing Spoink is a curse, it is at least one from which you could rescue the poor little piggy. At level 32, Spoink evolves into Grumpig. Grumpig is a big, purple, anthropomorphic pig with black pearls on its head and belly. It is no longer bouncing, but instead perpetually dancing a little jig. Pokemon Sapphire tells us, Grumpig uses the black pearls on its body to wield its fantastic powers. When it is doing so, it dances bizarrely. This Pokemon's black pearls are valuable as works of art. Pokemon Emerald tells us, it stores power in the black pearls on its forehead. When it uses psychic power, it performs an odd dance step. Its style of dancing became hugely popular overseas. Grumpig is categorized as the Manipulate Pokemon, and combined with its dance-based psychic control, it feels a little like a villain from a silly children's cartoon. That said, with this line's rejection of the Bible's teachings, it almost feels like this Pokemon could represent the idea of Satan influencing the youth through the inappropriate dance moves of rock and roll music. Grumpig was never exceptionally powerful in the video games. Though mediocre speed, decent special attack, and some okay abilities meant it was pretty good here and there. Back in the day though, Grumpig did have an especially good run of cards in the Pokemon trading card game. At one point, an actual Grumpig deck was apparently viable. The name is interesting. Grumpig seems to suggest this is a grumpy pig, but Grumpig usually comes across as pretty happy in its dancing. Perhaps it comes from grunt instead. After all, the Japanese name is Boopig, and Boo-Boo is the Japanese onomatopoeia for the sounds a pig makes. Also, Pokemon Ruby specifically references Grumpig's grunting noises. Grumpig uses the black pearls on its body to amplify its psychic power waves, regaining total control over its foe. When this Pokemon uses its special power, its snorting breath grows labored. This is a weird Pokemon family. Taking Bible verse, a cartoonish visual gag on a pig's anatomy, and a pun of farming as starting points, we end up with a little bouncing cutie and a big dancing creep. Fantastic. Plus, I like the insinuation that actually, it's worth trying to teach anybody. Although, you know, I'd like it if more Christians accepted the idea they don't have to preach to everybody. Music for Luke Loves Pokemon was composed by Jonathan Cromie. Artwork for the show is by Katie Groves. Writing, editing, and producing is all by me, Luke Summerhays, and costs are covered by my lovely supporters on Patreon. If you like this podcast, please rate and review on whatever podcast app you're listening through, and please tell your Pokemon-loving friends. The podcast can be found on Twitter and Facebook at Luke Loves PKMN, so why not get in touch? The next two monsters are Spinder and Trapinch, so please tell me your thoughts about those two or any other monsters. Lastly, as I mentioned, this podcast is supported by Patreon. If you want to listen to episodes early and help keep the show hosted online, visit patreon.com/podcastiopodcastius. And even if you don't feel like doing any of that, thank you so much for listening. I love Spoink, and remember, I love you too.